Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Usually on this show, I tend to stay away from behind the scenes drama because it stresses me out. However, if I'm to talk about this movie, I need to talk about the behind the scenes drama because it is important for not just this episode, but also the finale of this season. Disclaimer: in order to fully discuss this movie, I need to delve into some triggering topics such as harassment, taking one's life, and a few others. If you are uncomfortable with any of those topics, do not watch the intro to this review. For those of you who are still here, let's get into the rocky history of this movie. So, if you somehow don't know, Warner Brothers' initial plan for the DC Extended Universe had Zack Snyder thoroughly involved as the world builder, as Man of Steel was a successful movie. However, when Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice was a critical failure, Warner Brothers got cold feet, and when Suicide Squad failed critically, they got even more nervous. However, Zack Snyder was still attached to DC's biggest project, the Justice League movie, which was a big epic story that was 4 hours in length and contained a ton of content that would redeem the DCEU vision. Snyder was attached to the project and was almost complete with it, until something terribly wrong happened. On March 12, 2017, Snyder's daughter Autumn passed away due to self-murder, forcing both Snyder and his wife Deborah to leave the project indefinitely. This wasn't great, seeing as how the movie was nearly complete, but now had to be delayed. Now, there were two routes that WB could have taken. The first route is to wait for Snyder to come back when he's ready. Delay the film from the Christmas season of 2017 until the summer of 2018 and release the movie as originally intended. That's what I would do. Or find a new director to finish the film. They did the latter. Not only that, but they hired Avengers director Joss Whedon. The most successful comic book movie at the time is what he directed. So he seemed like the right man for the job. But there came a few problems with hiring him. The first one is that Warner Brothers made this as their excuse to replace Zack Snyder because of the bad press of Batman vs. Superman. Also, Marvel and DC in regards to films have very, very, very different tones. This one's my favorite for the third reason: Joss Whedon didn't want to do this. That's right, the main reason why Joss Whedon wanted to leave Marvel is that he felt like he couldn't get a good groove with an ensemble cast, which is kind of stupid to say because it worked well with both Firefly and his Avengers films. That doesn't matter though. You hired a guy who claimed he couldn't get the groove with Marvel to work with your company. Also, the lighter, more fun tone works with Marvel, but it wouldn't have worked for DC because Zack Snyder established a darker, grittier tone. Finally, I find it absolutely gross that DC, mainly Jeff Johns, a man we thought was a good one for DC, hired a new director to change the tone of the movies right after one of them left due to a family matter. That is one of the most evil things you could do, and it makes me feel gross inside. Moving on, the movie was mandated to a measly 2-hour runtime, half the runtime originally intended to play more times in theaters. Something they used with more of their movies, but has slowed down recently. Over the course of a few months, Whedon reshot and re-edited the entire movie, calling back the cast, verbally abusing them, and all around making one of the worst ever productions in cinematic history. The trailers primarily featured Zack Snyder's footage, but TV spots and some marketing showcased the new stuff added in recently, with the movie arriving in theaters on November 17th, 2017. And it did not get the reception that the Warner Brothers executives and DC wanted it to. With a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't the worst for DC, but it isn't great, with the consensus saying Justice League leaps over a number of DC movies, but its single bound isn't enough to shed the murky aesthetic, thin characters, and chaotic action that continue to dog the franchise. And Christ, did audiences hate this movie. The box office numbers don't lie. The movie bombed. The domestic numbers not making the $300 million budget back. Everyone on the internet hated this movie so much that they tweeted to Warner Brothers to release Snyder's original vision in a 3-year long war that they ended up winning. Yeah. But before I talk about what made Snyder's original vision great, we need to talk about what caused the theatrical version to fail. This is a review of the 2017 theatrical cut of the Justice League movie, which is going to be referred to by its name given by the DC fans who mocked it. Josstice League. Fueled by his restored faith in humanity and inspired by Superman's, played by Henry Cavill, selfless act, Bruce Wayne, played again by Ben Affleck, enlists the help of his newfound ally Diana Prince, played again by Gal Gadot, to face an even greater enemy in the form of Steppenwolf, voiced by Ciarán Hinds. Together, Batman and Wonder Woman work quickly to find and recruit a team of metahumans to stand against this newly awakened threat. However, despite the formation of an unprecedented league of heroes, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, played by Jason Momoa, Cyborg, played by Ray Fisher, and The Flash, played by Ezra Miller, it may already be too late to save the planet from an assault of catastrophic proportions. Now, I need to make this clear right now. This is not the movie the plot promises it to be. I made it sound cool and interesting, but its execution could not be more different. What was mostly an excellent and well thought out version of a pretty straightforward plot turned into a goofy, ugly, and downright insulting movie that deserves all of its negative attention that it has gotten in the past 6 years. This is a prime example of how not to make a movie. If I was teaching a filmmaking class, I would talk about the history of how this film was made and what killed it completely. If you want to make a movie, then take advice from films like Star Wars. Anyway, while the destruction and corporate murdering of this movie is prevalent in the tone, how much does it affect the overall film and other aspects? Well, let's find out. None of these characters are consistent. Batman went from a scary vigilante that branded criminals, broke several bones, and had a deep and threatening voice to a guy who's oddly racist and makes a joke about bleeding. Yeah, because that's what I totally think when I think of Batman. Now, to the movie's very little credit, I kinda like the opening action scene with Batman on the roof. It was pretty fun to watch, and it was a neat little action scene. This is one of the okay additions to the movie, but there aren't many of those, just keep that in mind. As far as Wonder Woman goes, oh, screw you, Joss Whedon. Why do you keep doing that? Stop taking characters that we take seriously and turn them into jokes. Gal Gadot was terrible in this movie due to all the reshoots and her wooden acting. Now, as far as the three Leaguers are introduced, they do nothing. The Flash is morphed into the butt of every joke. He has elements of an okay character, but it's the writing that kills him. Let's see. There's the brunch scene, the I'm afraid of bugs scene, the it's like a cave scene, the pet cemetery joke, and the Dostoevsky joke when he's saving the dumb Russian family. Yeah, why did we like this character again? Oh, yeah, right. Snyder wrote The Flash as an actual character. Forgot about that. As far as Aquaman goes, Jason Momoa is trying his best, but the writing does not do justice, no pun intended, to his character because they turned him into a stupid joke. I don't know what's worse, the Flash or him. But you know what? It doesn't really bother me too much because he was redeemed afterwards. Again, Snyder wrote him as a character and Whedon wrote him as a joke. I really hate this movie sometimes. Cyborg isn't even a character, he's just there. I think Joss Whedon is racist for not using him. And then we have Superman, and yes, while he's lighter like he usually is, it's inconsistent with how his character was in the previous two films, and his CGI'd out mustache bothers me. I don't need to explain why or how because I think you get the point. This is awful. That tanks Superman's character for me in this movie, and that sucks. How do you take a well established superhero team and turn them into this? Ugh, this is absolutely ridiculous. If you thought they were bad, just wait until I talk about the villain. Steppenwolf is a sorry excuse for a villain. Why take what is a henchman of a more popular villain and turn him into the main one? Well, ask Zack Snyder that question because he did it. Whedon took Steppenwolf, gave him a clean and sterile and ugly design, and made his voice more high pitched and less threatening, and turned him into a joke. This is sad and pathetic and reminds me a lot of how bad Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor got in Superman 4. Out of all the comic book movie villains, I'd argue that Whedon's Steppenwolf is the worst out of all of them. And remember this, Mark Hamill's Joker and Clancy Brown's Lex Luthor are a billion times better than this version of Steppenwolf, and they were from an animated show. Wow, that just hurts. Anyways, the characters in this movie that are supporting don't really do anything whatsoever, so I'm not going to be talking about them. That's how an ensemble cast can be completely wasted, and that sucks. You know what else sucks? The freaking VFX. Seriously, the CG died out, mustache, Steppenwolf, the background cyborg for the reshoots. God, this movie looks absolutely horrendous. The color grading is obnoxiously bright, and that really sucks. If I wanted to look at something worse, I would just throw on Teen Titans Go. That's something you should never hear me say, but I just did. Now, moving on to something more positive, I have to say that Danny Elfman's score is actually pretty good. It's not the best thing he's done, but I do like listening to it. And as far as action scenes go, most of them are from Zack Snyder, but they feel less impactful, especially the final battle, which is so ugly to look at. So, yeah, this movie is as bad as you remembered and even worse. It's not the worst ever DCEU movie or the live action DC movies that are bad, but it's a mistake that won't ever come off of DC's movie legacy, which is why I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. Of course, this movie's failure affected the other DCEU movies, so I won't give it those a fair shot anymore for this season. I'm just going to finish the DCAMU reviews and get to the real Justice League movie for the finale. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.